Hello, it's Blackbright, hot on your trail again. Welcome to my channel. First time passing through, you know the drill. Thumbs up, thumbs down. I always get a thumbs down. Who is that one that always gives me a thumbs down? Sometimes I get two thumbs down, but there's always someone who gives me a thumbs down. I'd love to have a little note as to why I always get a thumbs down. Anyway, it's each to their own. I don't mind. I'm just curious about who kind of instinctively listens to my voice and gives me a thumbs down. Anyway, apart from that, you can subscribe, you can interact with my subscribers, or you can leave a comment. You're free to do whatever you like, including putting your thumbs down. Anyway, what do I want to talk about today? I want to talk about Priti Patel, who says people will die. And this is relation to the immigration policy. No recourse to public funds, which has affected so many people. Now, a lot of people will say, why the hell should migrants have recourse to public funds? And the thing is that when they put migrants down, it's just a polite way of calling them immigrants or foreigners. So let's call a spade a spade. Let's say it like it is. Why should foreigners have access to public funds? Now, I can understand the premise upon that. I can understand why the Border Force or the Home Office or whoever would say no recourse to public funds. You're coming over here to work, therefore you have to support yourself. I can understand that. But what happens in a situation like this lockdown when even EEA nationals can't exercise their treaty rights because they can't work? What about the migrants who have come over legitimately and who have been working, but because of the lockdown, they've been made redundant or they've been laid off in some other way? They might have been on short-term contracts, we don't know. But what happens in those situations? I think there should be some kind of concession. I don't believe in people, living off of the state, so to speak. I don't believe in that. But when it's not their fault and they have a record of working diligently for years in the country and through no fault of their own, they are penalised. And the reason why Priti Patel is saying people will die is because this no recourse to public funds and the fact that people can't get work because of work shortages now means that a lot of people are going to be homeless. And once you're homeless, you're in a vulnerable position, could get the coronavirus, could end up in a fight, could be depressed. There's a lot of reasons why homeless people die. And that is what we're facing now. Apparently, they're not amending the no course to public funds. They had this homeless scheme that they put in just before the lockdown, and it was called Everybody In. And what it was an emergency homeless scheme that housed the homeless people. I don't know if it's as a result of the lockdown or whether it was housing pre-existing homeless people, or whether it was housing people who was in a desperate situation since the lockdown. But they had this scheme. I think they started off with 3.2 million. It then got increased to 3.2 billion, and it was given to all these all these borough councils to deal with their housing problems. And for 3 months, well, the 3 months is up now. What the government is saying, we haven't got any money. This was a short-term measure. So what's going to happen? The people who are in these temporary housing, they're all going to be booted out on the street, and we're going to have an influx of homelessness. That is the long and short of it. And so, to be honest, they paint such a nasty picture of migrants that when you hear, there's no recourse to public funds, your first reaction as a Brit, a white Brit, is to say they've got no business accessing public funds. And These people who we're talking about had no intention. Otherwise, they wouldn't have signed the waiver. They had no intention of accessing public funds, because when they come into the country, that is a part of the visa application. They agree they don't want no recourse to public funds, because as far as they're concerned, they've been promised a job, they've got somewhere to live. I don't know if their family's working or whatever, but as far as they're concerned, they don't need to access public funds. They are self-sufficient, they're resourceful, and they're independent. But when you have a precarious situation such as what we've had that affects nearly everybody, apart from the rich, where a lot of people's financial situation has been compromised, there should be exceptions. You can't just hold tight on your legislation just because you've written it. There needs to be some flexibility in situations like this. But instead, not only are they insisting that the no recourse to public fund remains, but they're also pushing even harder the hostile environment policy, and they're also talking about what was that other thing I was talking about earlier? Oh, it's gone out of my head. But my point is, they're making it extremely difficult. Extremely difficult. Can you imagine resorting to bloody homelessness? I can't think of anything worse, especially when it's not your own fault. Now, there might be a light at the end of the tunnel for people who have come here recently and through no fault of their own, because of this coronavirus situation and because they have no recourse to public funds, they could go to the social services. It means they cannot ever come back to the UK. But if they're stuck and they want to get back to their country and they don't have any money, rather than going to the Home Office, they can go to their local social services and say, look, this is the situation. I've lost my job. I was with them with X amount of time. You don't even have to explain all of that. All you need to say, they're not going to offer it. All you need to say is, I'm in this precarious situation. I've lost my job. I've got no money. I've got no access to public funds. I need to go back to my country. They will pay for your ticket. I think they give you a little pocket money and they will escort you to the airport. Make sure you get on the plane so you don't just skip without a ticket, and you pick up the ticket at the airport. That's fine for people who have probably come over on a short-term contract and found themselves in this precarious situation. But what about the Windrush generation who have been here for years and who were wrongly classified as illegal immigrants because they don't have documents? What about them? They have no recourse to public funds. Yet they are legitimate British Commonwealth citizens, and they have a right to be in the country, but no recourse to public funds, no access to a bank account, can't get a job, can't rent a room, can't get a car, can't get a license. What about them? What about the EEA nationals who, through no fault of their own, they cannot exercise their treaty rights because of the lockdown, because they've lost their jobs? What about them? I mean, there should be some provisos in this legislation. Fine, you have this, oh, no recourse to public funds, but there should be some kind of provisos in situations like this. There should be a way that people can exist, because what is happening is, what they're actually doing is, they're taking away their livelihood. They're actually, it's almost like premeditated murder, if I want to be extreme. Because if you take away a person's ability to live and survive, You take away all their basic needs. And more or less you're leaving them to die or survive like an animal. What is that? Because that's in essence what is happening. Because all these people who are going to be forced on the street, and sadly, because of through no fault of their own, who could have predicted the coronavirus? Who could have predicted a lockdown? Who could have predicted people losing their jobs? Who could have predicted a furlough, which affects people's income? Who could have predicted that they couldn't afford their rent? You're going along quite happily for all these years, paying your rent on time, and that's a sad thing. There is no, you don't get no brownie points for a good history, for a good financial history. You don't get no recognition for that. You've been paying your mortgage, you haven't been missing a payment for maybe 15, 20 years. Or you've been paying your rent for goodness knows how many years, you haven't missed a payment. But God forbid you miss a payment. And there's no leeway. I mean, I know there's a few landlords who have been given their tenants leeways, and thank God for those. But how long can they do that for realistically? The government put them in the position. The government should take them out. The government should rescue them. It's not like they decided to not want to work. It's the government said you can't go to work, you have to social distance. That's the government. We're shutting down businesses, we're shutting down everywhere. That's not individuals' fault, and you do it for 3 bloody months. How are people supposed to survive without an income for 3 months? And that's what I'm saying. When people are rich, they cannot understand how people how people do not have a savings account or do not have money on standby. They don't understand that concept because they got thousands in the bank, maybe millions in the bank. So they don't understand how the ordinary person might not have money put away for a rainy day. For them, in their mindset, it's logical. Why wouldn't you have money put away? Why wouldn't you have money set aside for 6 months? Because that is what they say. You should have 6 months' salary set aside for an emergency. So they're not going to be able to understand how people live from hand to mouth, week by week, waiting for their next salary or waiting each month for their salary so they can pay their bills. They cannot comprehend that because that is not what they're used to. So they don't see what's happened as a big deal. And when people are saying, oh, look, we can't pay for this and we need this, they're like, what's going on here? We're dealing with a load of useless people. We're dealing with people who can't, who are unable to be self-sufficient. We have a little crisis and these people can't take care of themselves. This is how the rich people think. They're looking at these people and thinking, what kind of people are they that cannot look after themselves, that haven't put money aside to sustain themselves? And these people expect us to bail them out. We've had a crisis. Why should we be bailing out all these people? Why haven't these people got their lives in order? So they don't understand where the John Joe or the John public are coming from. And even if they do find out, they're like, it serves them right. They should have done this. They should have had that in place. Why are we rescuing them? Okay, we thought we'd rescue them for 3 months, but you mean to say after 3 months they can't get on their feet? There's no concept of how people can rise above adversity when everything's been taken away. We do not have people leaving inheritances for us. We do not have rich aunts and uncles who can bail us out. That's not how the ordinary person lives. The top 1% might live like that. But the majority of people do live from hand to mouth. And I admit, some people live beyond their means. Some people buy things that are unnecessary. Some people overextend their credit. Yes, I understand that. Some people are negligent and they don't pay their rent and they don't pay their bills and they are on drugs and they are on criminals. I accept that as a part of this big bad world. But the majority of those that do and have paid their way, they should be given consideration. There should be something that records their payment history. I mean, they can get credit scores. So there should be something that shows people's credit scores or something. And they should be able to say, okay, this section of people have been really diligent. They've paid their rent, they've paid their bills. I can see that they've been working consistently for all these years. Therefore, I think there should be something to help these people. But you can't just do a blanket strategy for everyone. It's not fair. And yes, people are going to die. Priti Patel is right. If they don't die from starvation, they'll probably die from high blood pressure or stress or heart attack or stroke or loneliness or depression. Can you imagine when, through no fault of your own, you've lost everything? And yes, okay, this country might not be your own, but and I can understand for people who've been here, like I said, for a short while. But what about the people like the Windrush generation who have been here since they were 10, 11, 12 upwards, and who also find themselves in this unsavoury situation? What about them? But nobody's going to care. People in government are not going to care. They're going to say, well, go back where you come from then. That's what they're going to say. You weren't born here. Go back where you come from. It doesn't matter that they haven't been in that country or where they originally come from for 80% of their lives. That doesn't seem to matter. The fact is that they weren't born here. We have no responsibility for them, so they need to go back. It's really quite sad. So what else have we got here? Have I saw that? Yeah, I think those migrants who ticked off no recourse to public fund, I think it was a trick. I mean, well, I don't know if it's a trick, but I think there should have been something written in there, a proviso written in there. Okay, no recourse for public funds unless we have a natural disaster or unless there are mitigating circumstances. There should be something in there that protects them from situations like this. So, because of the lockdown, like I said, we've had redundancies, furlough, dismissals, and no work. So, the Everyone In housing scheme is an emergency housing scheme for the homeless, like I said. But the government are withdrawing funding. It managed to house 5,400 people in temporary accommodation. The end of those 3 months, probably about August. It seems like everything's happening in August. They're going to be turfed out. Or they may be turfed out. There's a lot of charities and borough councils trying to work with the government to extend. But there needs to be a way that this can be done without the government telling us how many billions it's costing them. It shouldn't be like that. And that's what pees me off, as much as a lot of these organisations and charities are helping, they're only doing it because of the money that they're getting. And so that costs the government even more money. There should be some kind of system that where people are they're not doing it for financial gain. But a lot of people, they're only helping because they're getting paid, and they're getting paid a lot of money. And so when the government decides, look, we cannot afford to do this anymore, because it's not just about housing individuals, it's about paying these charities or the borough council or whoever houses them. It's about paying their salaries and paying, the hotel and whoever else who's looking after them. There should be a simplified system that doesn't make it so expensive. There should be some big building. Why put them in bloody hotels? That's expensive. Of course it's going to cost you a lot of money. There should be some big building that they can just say everybody gets one room, or maybe one large room. And I mean, it's still better than being homeless. And it's paid for, that building. And they put people in there, so they're not, and they might have a security person at the door, so they're not paying all of these government agencies and charities lots of money to process this. But there again, they're going to want to know who is who, and all that administration work is going to cost money. So because they want to know who is who, and they want to make sure that people are legitimate or eligible for this housing, they can't do it simply. It is going to be difficult because everything needs to be traceable and trackable. So I don't think there is an easy way. But there should be something should be able to be done so that people who have come over here legitimately wanting to work, who have worked, and the only reason they are not working now is because of the lockdown and they've lost their job, there should be some kind of concession. That's all I'm saying. They shouldn't be relegated with all the rest of the homeless and all, as though they're worthless people and as though they don't have no ambition and as though they're illegal migrants. They should be relegated like that. There should be different classifications of why people are in the position that they're in. But who's got time for that? They haven't got time to do all that. They haven't got time for all that work. It's a tick box exercise. You go to DWP, no recourse to public funds. Sorry, we can't help you. That's it. Can't help you. Next thing they do, they go off to the council. The council will say, okay, we can put you in temporary accommodation for so long. Their background doesn't matter. The fact that they've been paying rent doesn't matter. The fact that they have their own home and have been paying mortgage all these years, that doesn't matter. Nothing matters. Their background doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is the position they found themselves in at this particular stage in time. And you are just a statistic at that point. So, that is where we're at, peeps. It's not a pretty picture, and it can happen to every single one of us. So, the money that they've given them, the everyone in housing scheme, also protected, it was designed to protect the homeless, but it also allowed healthcare and helped with addictions. So, housed, like I said, 5,400 people. So, that's what we're going to see. I mean, it's not very nice, is it? The picture that we're seeing is not nice, and we're just getting a glimpse. It's just like a big movie of how the economy is collapsing, of the homelessness, and there's no jobs, and I mean, talk about bloody doom and gloom. That's all I've got to say, peeps. Bye-bye.